Hello and welcome back to the Crime Reel. For today's true crime narration, we shall be looking at the life and crimes of serial killer Robert Maury. He is also known as the Tipster Killer. Robert Edward Maury was born in Del Norte County, California, on the 24th of February 1958. Very little is known about his early years, but what we do know is that he had at least one sibling, a brother, and in later years would claim that he had suffered both physical and mental abuse at the hands of his father. As an adult, he lived in Cottonwood in southern Shasta County. He supported himself by working as a landscaper at a golf course and also as a dried flower arranger. This income was supplemented by selling marijuana. On the 6th of November 1987, Robert was arrested at his home on suspicion of 3 murders. The events that led up to his arrest began just over 2 years earlier, in the spring of 1985, and stemmed from his desire to both profit and be recognised for his crimes. In the May of 1985, Robert rented a room in the home of 48-year-old Avril Weeden. Within a couple of weeks of his arrival, Avril's mother, Eula Chartier, started to have concerns for her daughter's well-being. Eula had phoned her daughter on several occasions and, each time, Robert would answer the telephone and state that Avril was either out or unavailable. However, when Avril failed to return any of her mother's calls, Eula became increasingly worried. She kept calling asking about her daughter's whereabouts until Robert eventually became tired of her questions, shouting, "How in the hell am I supposed to know where she is?" Avril's brother, Bill, decided to visit her house, and the family's concerns were raised still further when he met her new tenant, Robert, who gave conflicting stories as to Avril's whereabouts. Bill asked around, and a neighbour, Ray Morris, told Bill that the last time he had seen her was riding off with Robert on the back of Robert's motorcycle. Avril's family reported her missing on the 25th of May 1985. Robert was interviewed by the police on the 3rd of June. He told them that he had given Avril a lift on his motorbike to a telephone box, left her there, and then went to a different location to buy her some drugs. He then claimed to have returned to the telephone box to pick her up and said that they both returned to the house. Although the police were very suspicious of Robert, there was no evidence to contradict his story. On the 19th of June, an anonymous person called the Secret Witness Program of Shasta County. This is a private, non-profit organisation that is dedicated to improving public safety and also solving crimes by generating information to assist law enforcement. The program protects tipsters by allowing them to remain anonymous while still rewarding them for the information that they provide. The anonymous caller spoke to Shirley Landreth at the program and asked her how much the reward would be for information leading to the discovery of Avril's body. The anonymous person called again on the 8th of August. Shirley recognised his voice from the previous call, and once a reward amount of $500 was agreed, the caller told Shirley what he knew about the location of Avril's body. The caller also claimed that he knew the identity of Avril's murderer, and if he received his reward money in a timely manner, he would provide more information. He then went on to say that there were 6 unsolved murders in Shasta County, and that he could provide details to help solve 2 of them. Later that day, Avril's severely decomposed body was found buried in debris off of a trail behind a car body shop on Bocelli Lane in Reading. An autopsy revealed that she had died from strangulation and had also suffered multiple skull fractures around the time of her death. Shirley would receive 4 more calls from the same tipster during the August of 1985. On the 12th of August, he claimed that the person responsible for Avril's death lived with her. The caller would not agree to meet with the detectives, but would answer their questions anonymously using Shirley as an intermediary. On the 15th of August, he called again and informed them that the murderer was named Bob or Robert and had rented a room from Avril. The caller said that she had been strangled with a clothesline from her back garden, dragged to where she was, eventually found, and then hit with a rock to make sure that she was dead. The caller also gave the location of the clothesline used to strangle her, and it was found next to a shed in her back garden. A further call was made on the 26th of August, and, in response to more questions, the caller described the clothes that Avril had been wearing at the time of her death. Robert was interviewed again by the police on the 4th of September and reiterated what he had previously told them. There was still no evidence against him. In November 1985, Robert spoke to the police again and, in return for consideration in an unrelated stolen property case, he gave a statement claiming that it was Avril's neighbour, Ray Morris, and an unknown accomplice who had killed her. Robert went on to say that the pair had threatened to kill him if he turned them into the police. Another interview followed on the 10th of December, where slight inconsistencies began to emerge in Robert's story. It was noticed that the way he talked was similar to the way in which the anonymous informant said and phrased things. Robert was asked if he was the person who kept calling the tip line. He said that he wasn't. On the 11th of September 1986, Robert called the tip line and gave his name along with information about a burglary in return for a reward. Shirley recognised his voice from the numerous anonymous calls the year before. Another year passed, and on the 20th of June 1987, Robert met a woman by the name of Jacqueline H. and offered her a ride on his motorbike, which she accepted. Later, she spotted him near her house, and Jacqueline agreed to go out with him to Happy Valley to meet up with some fellow bikers. Not far into the journey, Jacqueline realised that they were not headed to Happy Valley. Instead, Robert took her into the woods, placed a rope around her neck, and ordered her to strip. He then sexually assaulted her before telling her to get dressed. Finally, he then drove her back home. Jacqueline believed she was going to die that night, but was terrified and went into shock. She did not report the assault at the time, but came forward later as details of Robert's other crimes emerged. A couple of days later, on the 22nd of June 1987, a lady by the name of Dawn Berryhill left her 6-month-old son with a friend in order to meet up with a man named Bob, now known to be Robert, who she was planning to rent an apartment from. Several people identified him as being with her that night. She was never seen alive again. Her disappearance was not of immediate concern to those who knew her, as she would often leave home and return a few days later. However, when she did not return, her disappearance was reported by her mother. 4 days after Dawn's disappearance, another woman, 30-year-old Belinda Jo Stark, also disappeared without a trace. She was due to appear in court in Nevada City on 29th of June 1987, but never showed up. As Belinda also had a habit of coming and going, she was never reported as missing to the police. On the 8th of August 1987, the anonymous caller made contact with the tip line again, this time asking how much reward he would get for information relating to the location of the body of someone by the name of Gretchen Olsen. Once again, Shirley believed the voice to be Robert's. Several more calls were made in which the caller said that Gretchen had been dead for about 6 weeks, and he provided details of where her body could be found. It was during one of these calls that Shirley recorded a sample of the caller's voice. She played it to Detective Mundy, who was investigating the case, who agreed that he believed the calls were made by Robert Maury. As per the arrangement, the reward of $500 was left for the caller at the pickup point in the office of a title company in Reading. In exchange, the caller would provide an envelope giving information as to the identity of the killer. The caller collected the money, but the envelope that should have contained the information was empty. It was later established that Robert's fingerprint was in this envelope. Based on the information that the caller had already provided, more human remains were found in a similar area to where Jacqueline H. had been assaulted. It was not possible to immediately identify these remains. The following month, in September 1987, Robert once again made multiple anonymous calls to the tip line. His voice was recognised, and as the tip line was now working closely with the police, some of these calls were recorded. After negotiating another reward, the tip led to Dawn's body being found under an old mattress in a remote area approximately 200 metres from where the police had discovered the unidentified body in August. An autopsy showed that Dawn had been strangled to death with a bootlace. Surveillance was set up at the title company office where the tip money was collected, and Robert was seen and photographed entering the offices. The title company director was also able to positively identify him. Robert had by this time received about $2,000 from the tip line, which he had used to pay off some of his debts and also to buy himself a motorbike. Robert was questioned once again on the 5th of October 1987. It was suggested to him that he had killed the 3 women whose bodies he had helped find. Robert admitted that he knew all kinds of girls who were missing, but denied killing anyone. Shortly afterwards, Robert made 2 more calls to the tip line. He was extremely angry that his anonymity had not been maintained, and he asked to meet with the program coordinator to complain about this breach of his privacy. Roy Del Carlo, a member of the Secret Witnesses Board of Directors, agreed to meet with Robert. Working with the police, Roy was wearing a wire. During the meeting, Robert complained that he had been photographed collecting secret witness reward money and that he wanted an apology from both them and the police. The police also wanted Roy to try to find out about the unidentified body. Yet again, Robert wanted a reward in return for further information. This ultimately helped with the identification of the remains, who were confirmed on the 16th of October 1987 as belonging to Belinda Jo Stark. Her cause of death could not be fully determined, but from the autopsy together with evidence of the crime scene, it was concluded that she had been sexually assaulted and suffered an unnatural death. On the 6th of November 1987, Robert was arrested on suspicion of all 3 murders. He was placed in jail in lieu of the required $750,000 bail. The following day, as details of Robert's crimes and his picture was made public, further witnesses came forward, including a bartender, Sandra Morton, who confirmed that Robert had been with Belinda at the time of her disappearance. Robert claimed that he had never seen Belinda before. Nevertheless, his prints were discovered on the inside of her purse. On the 9th of November, Robert was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, and the option of bail was revoked. He claimed he was innocent and that he had merely witnessed one of the murders. At trial, Robert's defence was that he was a keen walker and had accidentally stumbled across the bodies whilst out walking. He had then been a good Samaritan and reported these finds to the tip line. However, the prosecution presented an altogether more convincing version of events, detailing the telephone calls that he had made to the tip line and stating that he would regularly visit the bodies of his victims and would only report them to the police once they had substantially decomposed. There were numerous witnesses that placed him with the victims in the hours before their deaths. Robert's former girlfriend, Beth von Milanich, testified that in 1985, when his landlady, Avril, was murdered, he had become very excited about the fact that he was a suspect. A former co-worker, Norma Schwartz, also came forward and testified that Robert had threatened her during an argument, stating, "Listen, B, I have killed before and you'll be just one more, and I'm going to snuff you out." The jury found him guilty of all 3 murders, and Robert told them to sentence him to death if they truly believed that he was guilty. On the 27th of October 1989, this is exactly what they did. Robert appealed his conviction in 2003 on the basis that many legal errors were committed during his trial. This included the fact that the jury had been told about the calls to the tip line, and he argued that his Fourth Amendment rights had been violated by the secret witness program not keeping his identity private. The California Supreme Court disagreed. They stated that tipsters to the line do not have a right to expect their calls to remain private, adding that any reasonable caller would know that the information provided would be passed on to law enforcement, and that the secret witness program only guarantees anonymity to witnesses and not criminals or tipsters who the police suspect are providing information about their own criminal activities. As a result, the appeal was rejected. With the timeline of events and Robert's claims of knowing about other unsolved murders, the police believe that he may have killed many more people than the 3 of which he was convicted, with one commenting that people he became acquainted with had a tendency to disappear. However, Robert has never been definitively linked to any other crimes and remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison in California. That concludes today's case. I'd like to say thank you to Laura Bustos for suggesting that I cover this case. Thanks for your email, Laura. You'll notice in today's video that there weren't many photos available. Thanks very much for listening to the Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. The lady behind the witness program of Shasta County, Shirley Landreth, passed away in 1994, aged 61. Her contributions in this case were crucial. Thank you, Shirley. Goodbye.